Hi, welcome back. So we'll continue on the importance and the power of devotion in approaching a spiritual path. So I honestly am not into rituals very much, and when I started the path, I didn't really like to chant. So I went from the Vajrayana Tibetan briefly to the Mahayana. So the Mahayana tradition, I did not go to for any chanting. I joined the Zen one, which is even better. They don't really chant much. And then later on, I decided to move to the Theravadins, the Theravada tradition, early Buddhist tradition, because there's also not much chanting, and I wanted to meditate more, to inquire into my mind. Yeah, so basically, so it may seem that when there's no chanting or less chanting, it seems that devotion, uh, having devotion for what you're doing, pursuing on the spiritual path, it may seem that it's not important. Because when I first started, how do I say this? I was very devoted to my own selfish aim, which is to be free from suffering. So when we start, our motivation could be a bit selfish, and as when we move along the path, it would become selfless. Because to be honest, all religion, I always hear people tell me, all religions are good. They are the same because they teach us to do good. I would like to change that, revise that to no, not it is not that all religions teach us to do good, but rather all religions teach us to become selfless. And what does selflessness mean? It means compassionate. It means love, universal love for all. And how do we arrive at that? We arrive at that through wisdom. So the wisdom part is also available in all religions, yeah. But for me, the Buddha spoke most to me in terms of wisdom, because he is very clearly a wisdom teacher. Right? There are 4 early Buddhist texts just on his wisdom and his talks on wisdom, right? Driven by his compassion. So let's look at the Theravada tradition. What are the devotional practices? Right. So of course we pay respect 3 times to the triple gem, to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So when I first did it, it was like, if I want to go to a temple, monastery, just do as Romans do lah. But over time, it was doing to prostrate, to let go of my ego, And then later on, as I progressed on the path, I started prostrating off my great love for the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Of course, there are times when I got lazy. I don't prostrate because my body is tired, but that doesn't take away my love for the Buddha and the Dhamma he taught, and all the Sangha that follows his teachings correctly. And every time I watch a documentary or a movie about the Buddha, I always tear, right? I tear because of his great love, of his great determination, that he was willing to die to know the truth of existence, of why we're all here. And I'm very touched by the effort, and I would always tear when I think of the Buddha after watching a movie or a documentary about him. So that brought up devotion, obviously. That's devotion. When you are very touched by someone, even Jesus, right? His ability to go through the crucifixion, the journey towards the crucifixion, the way that he took on suffering to show all of us not to fear if we have been kind, if we have been in the spiritual path and seen reality, a glimpse of it at least, there's nothing to fear. And Jesus was also a great figure for me in that sense. Yeah. So next, we chant to show devotion to the three jewels. So again, I used to chant for the sake of chanting, and reciting the chant was quite repetitive. Like I was just doing it repeatedly like a machine. But later on, every time I chant, I think of the Buddha and the Dharma he taught, which I've experienced for myself, and the practitioners who are so sincere. And this brings a tear to me. It opens up my heart, right? So this is the importance of devotion. It opens up your heart. If you are one of blind faith and do not understand what the Buddha taught, not experience the Dhamma, then the devotion part could be filled with judgment, comparison, right? Thinking that, your own religion is better than others. It could have that. So just watch out for it. True devotion, okay, is very soft. It opens the heart, doesn't judge. There's a lot of gratitude in devotion, okay? And then of course we meditate. Okay, meditate is like a ritual, right? I do every morning or at night. It's a way for me to experience the Dhamma which the Buddha taught us to look into, to investigate. Yeah. So in the Bible is also, right, Jesus always say, come and see. So actually it's the same as when I chant the chant of the Dhamma, right? To be seen by the wise here and now. It's the same thing. So we meditate. It looks like a ritual, but it's really because we have faith and devotion in the Buddha's enlightenment. And so we do that we don't do it out of love for the great teacher. I did it out of his wisdom. He was very rational and full of wisdom, the Buddha. It totally convinced me. But as I did it and I tasted some of the Dhamma he taught, that became total devotion and gratitude for me. Okay, but of course, chanting is not just devotional. There is also an aspect to chanting that can help us transform our worldly, ordinary mind in the 12 links of dependent origination into a mind that is sublime, that is filled with love. Okay, so sometimes when my mind is unstable or unsteady, or I have grief. My dad recently passed away 2 months ago. I had grief for his passing, and then I chanted. So it's not to get rid of the grief, but to remind my mind to think of something more sublime, to remind myself that nothing dies actually. Yeah. And of course, chanting is one way to, instead of having grief and looking for the next dessert to eat to make myself feel happy, or to distract myself by watching TV, right? I choose to so-called distract myself by thinking of, the Buddha and the Dhamma, because life and death, my father, is all part of nature. My father is part of the Dhamma. And yeah, so that's how I see it. So chanting and thinking of the divine beings, the three jewels, replaces sensual thoughts. The thought of I diminishes. Yeah, because you're thinking of the Buddha. What does the Buddha represent? The Buddha represents open space, no one there, selflessness. Because the Buddha's field is open, wide open space. It is also universal love and compassion and wisdom. When we chant the Buddha's name, that's what I'm reminded of. That I too am wide open space, right? Just like all the scientists say, we're all atoms, but atoms are far apart. We're actually space. Okay, so that's what I think about when I chant the Buddhist chant now. So you change your feelings, right? Because you're no longer about thinking about yourself, me, my, I. I'm grieving. Let me chant to get rid of it. I'm thinking of the greatness of the Buddha, how there is deathlessness, because everything is space and comes from space. There's really no one here, right? And And so you open up your heart and you release the sixth sense base and contact, and your feelings become devotion. It's like when you chant, you're like singing a devotional song. And in this chanting, this devotional song and feeling becomes like love. Okay, it's not sensual love, but a sublime love, okay, or for something divine. So I write for a Buddhist website, and the editor say, well, when you use the word divine, divinity, it suggests that there's a God, there's another being there. No, it's not. But there definitely is something divine, and we're all part of it. Like I shared before, this divine thing other people call God, and they put a personality to that God. Because if you don't meditate and you're not led by wisdom into opening your heart and mind through meditation to deathless awareness, you will put your human attribute to what a God is. So in Buddhism, there's no such thing as that kind of God. Okay, there's no God in that sense. But there definitely is something divine that causes through me, through you, through everyone else, including animals and the plant and the sun and the moon. It is that force we call Mother Nature or nature that is that so-called God inverted commas in Buddhism. Yeah, and I'm glad to know that this force is actually loving. And it's not dead. We tend to think of energy as dead. No, it is not dead. It is very much alive. It doesn't die. Okay. So, chanting, right? Chanting as a practice by Ajahn Kevali. So he said, this spiritual exercise of chanting has many beneficial aspects to it. The cultivation of mindfulness. First, your mind becomes focused. It doesn't become scattered. Think of A, B, C, D, and then circle around. Think of C, D, E, F, and then come back to A, B, C, D. Right? That is the hallmark of an ordinary mind. You can't stop thinking of many things in a day. Okay, when we chant, we cultivate mindfulness. We only think one thing. That's all. It's chanting itself, devotion, love itself. It is the building of concentration, the development of wisdom. Yeah, why? Why is it a development of wisdom? You see that people who are very scattered brain, they have no wisdom. Why? Because their mind is so busy thinking about everything else. So to have true wisdom, you need to cultivate a mind that is not noisy, that doesn't have mental chatter. Okay, right? So it also cultivates spreading of loving kindness, right? Because you think of the Buddha, universal love, spread to all around you as you chant. And also simply being present with a sense of timelessness. It's true when you meditate and when you chant and you're fully into that, thinking stops for some moments. And have you noticed that when there are no thoughts, where is time? Okay, so I leave that for you, right? I have found that all these aspects of our training can arise from chanting, particularly when we are reciting these traditional old archaic verses in the ancient language of Pali. Most of us don't fully understand Pali. However, an atmosphere is created from all the goodwill we generate when we chant. So you see, it can be generated if you're not chanting like a machine, right? So you cannot chant like a machine. You really have to be sincere, be grateful, right? But like I shared, you can only be very fully sincere and very totally grateful when you tasted some of the Dharma. Meaning, when you practice the Dharma taught by the Buddha, your heart lifts and you have some happiness, okay, derived from it. Then you're really grateful for the Buddha. So therefore, devotion easily arises. So putting our hearts into the chanting does have an effect, consciously or subconsciously. Chanting may help lead to awakening. Let's see. Furthermore, it may be that neither the teacher nor a respected spiritual companion teaches Dharma to a practitioner, but the practitioner recites the teaching in detail as they learn and memorized it. That practitioner feels inspired by the meaning and the teaching in that Dharma, no matter how they recite it in detail as they learn and memorized it. Feeling inspired, joy springs up. Being joyful, rapture springs up. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. Then the body is tranquil, one feels bliss. And when blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. This is the third opportunity for freedom. So over here, what is described is the stages of jhana, right? Rapture, very happy feeling arising in the body. Then of course, when the body become very happy, then it will calm down or become tranquil. When it's tranquil, then there's that contentment, right? Tranquil will be like happiness. Then there's contentment. You feel very bliss, contented. Then the mind just stays in the present, equanimous, in samadhi. Okay, so this is the opportunity for freedom. So it's not exactly just mechanical chanting, as you see. If there's no teacher around, no companion that teaches Dharma to you, you can always recite the teaching in detail, which means what? You have to memorize 12 links of dependent origination. You have to memorize the suttas, right? Or when you chant the triple gem, the chant of the triple gems, like in Pali, you have to remember the qualities of the Buddha, what is meant by Dhamma. So you have to know them by heart. Know them by heart is not just remembering the words and memorize and spitting it out, It's really understanding what those words mean. Only when you understand what those words mean, then can you feel inspired. Just like when I watch the movie of the Buddha, I'm inspired. Then joy springs up. That's why tears came out. Yeah. Okay, then I'm joyful. That makes me want to meditate whenever I watch anything about the Buddha, right? Then as I meditate, easily I have joy, which is rapture, springs up. Okay, so that's how it works. So in the Pali, there is that chant to the triple gem, which is the Buddha Vedana, Dhamma Vedana, and Sangha Vedana. So I'll just go through it briefly what it means. Okay, so you cannot chant blindly, you have to know what it means. Thus indeed is that Blessed One. He is the Holy One, fully enlightened, endowed with clear vision and virtuous conduct, sublime, knower of the worlds, incomparable, leader of men to be tamed, the teacher of gods and men, enlightened and blessed. So of course, if you are new to the Dhamma, you haven't really practiced, but you are intrigued by it, and you go to the monastery, you have to chant this like do as Romans do, right? But when you have experienced a glimpse of the Dhamma, you will fully be convinced that the Buddha is indeed divine, holy divine, right? Really enlightened, because you're so convinced that all the suttas you read, you just cannot defeat him in any debate. He's just so good, right? He's just fantastic. So much love and wisdom. Okay, then you read enlightened, you agree. Endowed with clear vision, you agree. Virtuous conduct, you agree, right? So as you move on along the path, you begin to understand what all these words mean when you taste the Dhamma he taught. What is the Dhamma he taught? The Dhamma of the Blessed One is perfectly expounded. Okay, which is true, because I live in Singapore. It's very hard to get teachers. It's very hard to have guidance. And fortunately for me, I have a teacher. And before my American teacher, I was pretty confused about all the texts I read. Well, I wouldn't say confused. I have certain understanding, okay, but she helped me understand it even better, right? Okay, so then I realized, oh yeah, the Blessed One's Dhamma is perfectly expounded. Why? Because if it's not perfectly expounded, I wouldn't have tasted the Dhamma just by reading some books, right? The books has so much wisdom. It opened my mind and allowed me to approach meditation, right? Okay, therefore it is to be seen here and now. It is true, because when I read the Pali Canon or some books or commentaries, I read and I reflect, and I reflect here and now, and I can see the truth. Okay, even in my dreams sometimes. It's just fantastic. And how not delayed in time? It truly is not delayed in time, because the more you reflect on it, right, the more answers you get. Inviting one to come and see, you see, come and see, which is in the Bible too. Come and see. Onward leading to Nibbana. Okay, to opening up of the mind, the heart. to something sublime in yourself, to be known by the wise, each for himself. Okay, so last but not least, then you see, right, the practitioners of the Buddha's disciples, yeah, has entered on a good way. So these are not just monks. You also include lay people who actually practice. To be honest, I shared before, renunciation is renunciation of the heart. Okay, it's not about your clothing. It's not about whether you got to shave your head or whether you got to live a certain lifestyle. Okay, even as a lay person, like, right, eating doesn't, I'm not so picky about my food anymore, but right, I just eat to keep healthy enough, like just so that I can continue working on myself. That's it, right? So okay, Sangha of the Blessed Ones has entered on the straight way. So straightforward, straightforward lah. The Dhamma cannot be, I've met people who have such huge pride. They live in this illusionary world. You can't really tell them the truth. They are truly not straightforward. And I mean, I'm sorry to be blunt lah. If you're not a straightforward person, it is very hard for you to enter into the Dhamma path, because you are your biggest obstacle. We are all our biggest obstacle. All of us are, period, full stop. The ego is such a big obstacle to seeing the truth. But the difference being between two people is one who knows that he or she is a big obstacle and is willing to be humbled, willing to take instructions without rebelling, okay, versus someone who hears something they don't like to hear, they rebel, and then they think they're right and they go on their own Dhamma path, which is an illusion, a delusion, okay? Right. So the Sangha of the Blessed One's disciples has entered the proper way, meaning being guided properly lah. Either you have a teacher, whether you have a good spiritual friend, or your friend would be like somebody who lives near you, a good friend, right, whom you trust, whom tells you the truth and you're not upset so easily, or you read the text lah to verify, right? So it's the proper way. That is to say, the 4 pairs of men, the 8 types of persons. So here they're saying that the Sangha is actually one who has entered the stream, who has certain enlightenment and become once returner, non-returner, or an arhat. And the 8 types would be those in between, right? Like if I'm a stream enterer, for example, I'm moving to the once returner state of mind. So once returner state of mind has the craving, pleasure, sense, desire, and hate greatly reduced lah, right? So before it becomes greatly reduced, this stream enterer have to work on themselves some more, right? So you see, this is inner working, right? In order to have greatly reduced sense pleasures, craving for sense pleasure, and the sense of self, and anger, right? So these are the 8%. So right, 4 are the stage, the Dhamma they have touched, and the in between, there's 4 more, a progression. So the Sangha of the Blessed One's disciple is fit for gifts, fit for hospitality, fit for offerings, fit for reverential salutation, as the incomparable field of merit for the world. So in the early Buddhist tradition, we only, a lot of times, only recognize the monks. I don't know, the early Buddhist tradition can be very, very conservative, okay, that to the extent that we don't believe anyone else has touched, has tasted stream entry or the once returner state. We tend to think that only monks can touch that, but actually it's not true. Lay people also can. But most of these gifts and hospitality and offering are given to monks, where we can obviously see, they shave their head, they wear the robe, so they practice so long, they must have stream entry or whatever, then we offer lah. So yeah, because the truth is, you can't really see someone's mind or read someone's mind to know their state of mind. Just like I said, therefore, if a Buddha were to come again, we might not even recognize him. Okay? Right. So I'll leave this to the next session, because this is to do with meditation. Thank you very much.